to discuss. I want to thank Tucker for calling me and asking me about this. I tend to, first of all, introduce myself. I'm Richard Olson. I grew up in Virginia. My dad had Dick's Conical Service, so I'm not technically junior, but I guess I am. Grew up, my entire life was in Midway. I started there, and by the time got done, graduated, and still there. When Tucker called me, we were going to talk about a subject, and Midway came up right away in my mind because I'm doing some research on something else. But Midway was at the time, and so when I took this over, I kind of started thinking after I was going through this is much too big of a story. And especially everybody that grew up in Midway has stories, or wherever you grew up. But I'm going to try to. I didn't know how to do that. I don't have a script, so I'm going to babble through. I have pictures here to show. I'll comment on them. I'll try to make everything as brief and as complete. And as I said, afterwards we'll talk about it if anybody wants to speak. I also brought all sorts of photos here. I want everybody to look at these before you go. These are all the class pictures. 1958, when the school opened, my class was the first class. So my class started in 1958 in kindergarten. So we were the first ones to go all the way through. I had a best friend that's 2 years older. He was at Johnson School. We pushed him in second grade. Second grade he started at Midway, and I talked to him a little bit. So we were the first class that went all the way through. So I have pictures from our class of each year there. I have pictures that I took of Midway, and I'll get into that, as far as the school. And then there's things from Walt Culbert and Carl Anderson when they developed Midway. Some of the ads. There's a large 1953 aerial view of Midway as it's being built. I have a winter one from 54 and a summer one from 53. The Midway Terrace one is out of the Saba Daily News. I blew that up. That's from 1949 when they were advertising. Carl was a very persistent. My father kept at him about buy a house, and my dad said decades afterwards, he says, I could, and you didn't hear my dad, he said, I could just kiss Carl Anderson to talk me into buying a house. He says, I couldn't afford it, I would have never done it, and he was very insistent. He says, the best thing I ever did. Anyways, I'll get started with the hopefully this will go. If I've got everything set up, we'll start with this first. This is just a test shot. If I stand here, is everybody here? Can you see this? I don't think we need to turn off any lights. This is pretty bright. Can you see it way back? Can you see it okay? Okay.
I'll try turning off. Can you see okay?
I don't know if it's going to make it nicer. Yeah, there we go. Good. Okay, that is good.
Thank you.
Okay. I was thinking first to just bring pictures, and hold them here and then drop them and such. And I did this. This is fairly new to me, so hold on. Okay. Now that'll be good. Okay. So, again, this is new for me to speaking, and I asked my son-in-law, I said, what would be the best way to really get into this? I said, what do you do? He works in Los Angeles at Walt Disney. And he said, well, if it's a really bad presentation, he said, there's a sure way to get everybody excited about it. So we'll see. I'm going to start it out here. I can get to the menu. I'm not too good at this.
Doing great. Yeah.
Okay. Exit. I have these things set up here with your phone. Sorry. Once I get it going, I have it all set up. I got in a loop into that, and like I say, there we go. So the best way to start this thing is with a little nudity. They said that if people are bored with your presentation, if you add a little nudity to the motion picture, that helps. So of course this is me in 1950. I'm not looking much different in
Thank you for wearing clothes.
So that's why I say you're all done now. It's already R-rated. So that was me, and this was 17 Vermilion Drive. And 17 Vermilion Drive. This is a quick blueprint from 1949. I wanted to put this in because I wanted to show something. This was an argument for a long time. Is Vermilion 2 L's or 1 L?
1 L.
It is 1 L. And the blueprint proves it because I remember getting in arguments with people. I thought Vermilion is 2 L's. You look in Polk's directory, it's 2 L's. You look in the phone book, it's 2 L's. It's 2 L's everywhere. They said, no, it's 1 L. And that proves it in 49, or that's what they intended. This is a ad from 1949. Again, I have a picture of it up here so you can look at it closer, but it's just advertising. The Midway Terrace started out first and selling homes, and so. All right, so this was 17 Vermilion Drive. This is on the top of the hill in Midway, very top of the hill. It is now 55 Vermilion Drive. The reason why it was 17, of what I've understood, is originally Vermilion went up and then back down again. It was numbered that way because it ended. It didn't go all the way to the top. I think it maybe went as far as Cuyuna, Telegraph, I don't know, and it ended there. So when my dad, when we moved into this house, and I was born into this house, it was 17. But if you look for 17 now, that isn't, it still exists, but it is now 55. There's the house in the winter, it's my dad's truck. Kids won't understand television antennas, so you could get some television. We did have an early television. Kids would never understand that. They'd say, "Didn't you stream everything?" No. Dad crawled up there and, "Is he getting any reception down there yet?" So that's 53, 54 winter. This is from the backyard of that house, Knob Hill. You can see how this was developing at the time. Virginia way out in here. This would have been spring of 54. This is our house that we finally, and Gary, you'll understand, this is 95 Vermilion Drive. This is when it was being built. This is your house right here. And no garage yet. Of course, Morris Dargan was here. But this was 95 Vermilion Drive, and we'll get more into that. All right, little me. These are the Dargan girls next door. Linda, Kathy, and Sarah. And then this one here is Susan Oliver, and I grew up with her, and that's the one that had your house. Champ Oliver, Tom Oliver had that. And so this was a birthday party in June of '56. I included this in not for all these kids, but I wanted to show you this hill. And right up here on Knob Hill, they're putting in and you'll see this later. See these hills? We had the best ski hill, toboggan hill, sled hill in the entire city. When there were no trees and no impediments, you went all the way up to Lingo's, up to the top. And you came down about 12 or 13 houses right down to the end. I think probably we were the one who hit the clothesline pole. But I wanted to show you the topography of how nice that was. All right, this is me on the skating rink, and it's still down there. That's off of what, Telegraph? Right down at, is it Telegraph? Yeah, in the corner.
Cuyuna.
Or is it, well, let's see, because this goes up all the way to Marion Homes, and then it starts with Vermilion. So would this be...
The red house was Tom Young's house.
No, this would be down where the skating rink is now.
Yeah, across from the skating rink.
Was Tom Young there now?
No, he sold it a couple of years ago.
I think
Who would have been Boxland? Rudy Boxland would be right about here.
Yeah.
And
maybe
so
it was
that's where-
Taconite.
Yeah,
You had to Taconite.
right. Taconite Drive.
And there's another point of it. But I wanted to put that up to show that I guess that has always been a skating rink as far as I remember. That's my brother. There again, Anderson, and I probably put this up, advertising for homes. Autumn is even more beautiful in Midway. Buy a home. Okay, here's Midway School, built in '58 for $652,000. So I tried to figure out that's about $6 million today. Sounds like it's still a part of me. That's my brother and I, fall of 58. That's right before I'm going to start Midway School. The roadway was all dirt at that time yet. Playing here with the slope of the street, playing here with my dinosaurs and trucks and everything, and I had a stream coming. I mean, this was absolutely beautiful. It didn't matter that I was playing out on the road. I mean, I had all sorts of things set up here. That would change later, but having that dirt pile there for a little kid that's incredible. But that's my brother behind me. All right, this is the first class. So we are the first that went to Midway. You are looking at the afternoon class of kindergarten with Miss Sandberg. And this is fall of 1958. So these are the people that started Midway. The students that started there. Of these people, I think I only am in contact with maybe 3 of them. Some of them I don't know whatever happened to. Some, of course, I'm just not in contact with. One or 2 passed away. Pardon?
Debbie Gentilini.
Debbie Gentilini is one I'm in contact. Yeah. Debbie Gentilini and Sue Oliver and Dennis Driscoll, and that's all. This is Cassie Holmes. She actually has a bail bonding business in Duluth right now. She's still at it, but she was. We were trick-or-treating in Midway in 1958. That's my brother in that time. Trick-or-treating in Midway, if you think about it, was just incredible with the young families because it was a young community, young families. So we were all kind of, baby boomer Midway. There were times where you could go out trick-or-treating. I'd come back with a bag full of candy. Of course, my dad wanted to inspect it. He said, in case there are any razor blades or anything. That's not why he wanted to inspect it. But he'd say, pour it out. He says, pour it out right in the living room and then go out and get some more. Pour it out there in the living room, and my brother and I out the door. And meanwhile, he'd be picking through it and everything. He wasn't worried. He was eating. But, to go around Midway and feel completely safe and be able to trick-or-treat, it was incredible. This year at my house, I had 3 people. 3 kids came to the door the entire night. I mean, in these days, when you're in a closed community like this with all young kids, it was just crazy. Arts and Crafts from 1958. My mint, and then this is it. And it tended to break there. Probably dropped it at some point, but I think I remember painting it, but maybe not. I just don't remember. I'm thinking for arts and craft, that was probably pretty about all you could do at that time is get some clay and stick your hand in it and give it to my mother. But that's something that I still have from 58. That would have been probably first grade when we started Minerva Anderson's class, which is this one. This is first grade, 1959 to 1960. I see there's more students here because of that AM/PM class, and I think they ran 2 grades anyways. Because I see people one year and then I wouldn't the next.
Is that 1960, that
There I
one?
am. This is 5960.
Yeah, I should be in that one.
Which one?
That one. Oh, that's second grade? Oh.
This is first grade.
Oh, first grade. Oh.
First grade. Okay. Yeah, this is first grade. Yeah, and if anyone sees themselves here, say, it's me. All right. Anyways, so that was that. This was first grade Halloween party. So I see a lot of people that I knew here that it was fun, to dress up and go to Midway and go to Halloween parties. That was always a good time. There I am as the clown. I guess I am. Of all of these costumes, the one that I don't know who it was, and I love this pig. I just love this pig. I was looking at it and I said, I really, really like that pig. Of all of the costumes. This is one of my dad's early tow trucks. The reason I put this on here is to see it's cold, too. This was 1959, 1960, sometime in the winter. This across the street this used to be Callan's house, Dr. Callan, and then they moved away, and then Ed Skelko, this Lucky 7, bought that. He was there. This is Emma Lang. I think Gunter may still be there. You still there? Okay. You can appreciate no garage, it's nothing. Now, the reason I pointed this out is there was a trail here that went all along here. And if you turn left and kept walking, you eventually get to the highway where Johnson Frost Stop was. You know, at the time when I was allowed to walk through the woods. If you turn right and go up this alley, it's right to Midway School. It was really nice. It was a fairly wide area. Now, as you know, this is Borgen's. There's the apartments, and Borgen goes around, and this goes right through. But that was at that time. Virginia 4th of July Parade downtown. Midway banner. All the schools would do that. They would have a banner, and then you would get behind what school you were from. So we did that, and so I wanted to show this out. And I told Dougie, and Mary, I said, no Chevrolets in these pictures, but I guess there is one. We've got a 210 four-door here. 57 Chevy Affectionado, so I noticed that one right away when I saw it. My brother and I in bed. Now you're going to think we were too poor to have two beds, but no, we weren't. The reason I showed this was this Midway pennant that we got from there, and I kind of wish I still had that. This is the ITC Stegosaurus model kit, and I think I have the remnants of that. The one thing that I have for sure is the Harvester cigar box. That is but there we are. And what this too is, once, I don't know, my mother took this because we were both in bed, but eventually we had bunk beds, and so I had the bottom one so I could put my foot up and kick my brother all the time and bounce him, and there were always fights in there. Okay, now we're at second grade. The teacher is not here. Miss Simonich. Miss Simonich could probably write a book on Miss Simonich.
I could.
Most people that I've talked to, and I've talked to people over time about different teachers at Midway, that was the one that was dangerous. The fellow I referred to earlier, that when he entered from Johnson and started in second grade, he had Miss Simonich first. He said, she beat me up. She grabbed my arm and squeezed it to her. And I'm thinking, yeah, I could see that. She was a taskmaster. I shouldn't speak ill of her now because she passed on. I think I looked up. She was born in 1919, so she's been 100 once. If she was so wrong. The thing that I remember about it is she made me come to school early all the time and stay late and try and catch up with my homework. And I brought my report cards here. I forgot to pull them out. I was going to read some of the things the teachers wrote, but maybe not. Keep in mind, I was probably at best a C student, at best. And I didn't pay attention, and I was slow. I should have gone back, but Barb King was in one of these. Is she in this one yet? Barbara King, maybe not. She was a girl in class in first grade. Minerva Anderson was so mad because I couldn't tie my shoelaces yet, but she was happy to tie them, and I was happy to let them. And I was very slow. So, anyways, when I got to Miss Simonich, it was time to change things. So I had to come early and go late, and I looked at my report card too. I think I had more absences that year than anything, so I got sick a lot because I didn't want to go. To finish her story, she was a wonderful woman when she wasn't in school. She was a customer at my dad's gas station. I actually filled up her car. She was wonderful. She was an angel. But she got in school and... My dad and I, this is a back on the field behind Midway School. There used to be a road, and there's probably remnants of it, that went up to the tower. It was the law enforcement tower at the very top of Midway. It's always been there. There was a road that went up from Vermilion or past the school and went that way. We call it the old road, and then it came down into, it hooked on Moore Drive and Terrace, I believe. And my dad was in the military. He was in occupation Japan, and he drove a Jeep at that time. So he was always into Jeeps, and he bought all different Jeeps. I think this might be a 44 or something. But anyways, I like to play soldier, so there I am with my helmet on and everything. And he pretended all the time, because that's what he did in the Army. He was a chauffeur for officers, so he was my chauffeur, and we'd go driving around back there, probably where we weren't supposed to, go up this road. We'd turn off of it. I don't think it's even there yet, but there was a little hill. And he'd come with that Jeep, and he'd go up this hill, and then he'd put in the clutch and back down, and up and down, and we'd do it 100 times. It was like a roller coaster. It was wonderful. It was just wonderful. We drove all over the place. To finish up the story, he let me drive when I was really young. He let me take the wheel, and boy, was that a thrill for a little guy. But later on in this, well, maybe the next year, and I started. What would happen is we'd go up to the, and this was a ballpark. If people that are familiar with Midway School, on the back there was this. It was higher elevation, but it was a ball field, and there was a backstop even for baseball back there. Which, by the way, I think the frame is still there. That's one of the two things that are left up in Midway. And we drive around here and drive up that field and everything, but we get to a point somewhere in Midway School area, and he'd say, "You can drive home." Because it was just out, I always say the end of Vermilion. I think that street now is Laurentian. It's called Laurentian. But at the time when we were growing up, that was just the end of Vermilion or Midway. So get onto Vermilion, take a right, down the hill, take a left, and we were at 95 Vermilion Drive. So he let me do that a couple of times first, and I was thrilled to do that. And one time, came down the hill, he was driving down, pulled into the driveway. My dad's nice Oldsmobile parked in the garage, and I pushed on the brake like I was supposed to, but forget that clutch. You forget about the clutch. About 2 or 3 hops and right into the back bumper of that car. And he wasn't mad, but my mother was. Why are you letting him drive? Another thing, I remember the one time my dad was the most kind, wonderful man, but I did get a spanking one time. I got a really good spanking. What happened was I broke open my piggy bank, and I got all the money that I could because I wanted a new bicycle. And so they allowed me to buy a bicycle with training wheels. And I rode it all summer. I was thrilled to have this thing. It had training wheels on it. And so then I had to pay for it. They said you had to do chores. So my mother notated somewhere. She says, yeah, he wants to do everything so that he gets paid for it. But what happened was I laid the bike behind the car, and my mother backed out of the driveway and drove over my bike and squashed it, but she didn't see me. And she thought maybe she drove over me. And she was so scared she was crying. Of course, I got a licking. Don't you ever leave your bicycle behind the car. Because I didn't set it up on the kickstand, too lazy, I laid it down. Right over me. And she was just, so that was my experience there. There I am. 4th of July Parade, 1961. Now the reason I show this, you see this little satellite, it looks like Saturn. It says Midway on it. And there again, we lined up behind the Midway banner. I've got an inflatable Sinclair dinosaur and carrying a club. I was into dinosaurs, really heavy into dinosaurs and monsters all through the 60s, so there I am. Here's another picture. I tried to blow it up more so you could see what that Midway pin was, but it was on there. And so we all marched in the parade. There again, 1961. So all these people back here are all Midway people, kids. All right, Miss Marilyn Well, 3rd grade. I remember her being, there's Barb King that tied my shoelaces, so she was still there. I remember her as being fine. No problems with her at all that I remember. I'm trying to remember where there's going to I should maybe push on this later. But anyways, if you look at my report card, though, it didn't change. She still said I was a flunky. Nah, it didn't say that. But I mean, you can tell by the grades. I didn't bring home anything that looked very good. My brother going to school, the reason I put this one in, he's starting in 61 now, he's starting kindergarten, but I wanted to put this in because, we had maths. That was the thing about kindergarten. Sleeps and eats. Sleep and have milk. I mean, how good was that? There he is, off to kindergarten. Cub Scouts are big. There's my wolf and my bear book from Cub Scouts. And I loved this, and I never followed through. There was Lions, Weeblos. You could have gone into Boy Scouts. I never got any further than the bear book. But the activities in there, if you ever get a chance, and I don't know what they look like now. I just know what my 1950s ones look like. the projects and all the things that you can do are just, you probably go back and do that again. And here's a Cub Scout visit. This is Mrs. Pavlovich that lived down the street from us, Mark Pavlovich. This is Danny, Jason, my brother Randy, Brad Johnson, Mark Lencia is there. I'm going to mention him later. Randy. But anyways, we're visiting the police station. So this is Officer Berg, according to the notes. And we went down and saw the police station. I wonder if they caught any of those people on there. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter. I remember the highlight of that was getting put in jail. They let you see what it felt like to get behind the bars, and I didn't like it. Slip and slide. This is back behind our house again, and there again, as I was telling you about the hills, once you got going in the wintertime, there was lots of exercise. But the old slip and slide, you buy those things, and it was nothing but a tarp, and throw water on, and away we go. And Brian Callen going down that. All right. In 1962, I showed you that dirt road that I was playing with that I just loved so much, and of course, they came in to put in concrete, the streets. And so these were the mounds that we had in front, and that was fun. That was better than dinosaurs next to the curb. I mean, the castles that we built out of sand and the monkeying around that we did. Remember one little kid that was down the street. This is actually, nobody wants it. He'd pick up old cigar butts. He's actually done. And you remember the markers were these kettles that had kerosene in them, and they'd light the tops of them, and they burned all night long. Those were the indicator things. So he's trying to light the cigar. I mean, there was all sorts, and probably tools are left and everything. But it was fun playing on those. It was like, okay, here's some kids from around, and I labeled them. Chrissy Peterson, her dad was the manager at Petola's for a while, and when I showed you that back side, biggest thing with her is I went tobogganing down our back hill because it goes straight down, and I kept going, and my toboggan went right through the basement window. Nothing but trouble. Miss Suzanne Pagnuco, 4th grade. Now, I always thought she was super nice. She was just a wonderful teacher. But I always thought this was unfair because Mark Lency, that's his grandmother. She was her daughter married Dick Lency, who had Lency. Well, the whole thing. So I always thought that he got favoritism, but I don't think he did. But I thought at the time, yeah, that's his grandmother. There again, I came home with the same marks. And there's Mark Lency again, Richard Kinnanen, Buddy Irish, Steve Robillard, and Jason. If anybody's around that would know those guys. But the interesting about this picture, of course, this was a party. Notice who I've got for party guests. And you notice the girls way in the background from the neighborhood standing there thinking, why weren't we invited? And there we are. I love this party. We had dinosaur hats and a dinosaur theme, and I was a dinosaur. So I'm wearing a pterodactyl. Some guys had dimetrodons. Yes?
Going back to the previous one, I find those tiered lawns really interesting.
Yes, and if you get a chance to look at these, especially this one from '53, you'll see how they cut it in, down. But and for runoff too, storm runoff, and I don't know that I remember anybody having a flooded basement. We never got water in our basement except when the water heater broke or those kinds of things. We had that I know when we came back from Minneapolis one time and the power had gone off or something had happened and the pipes froze and then we had water in the basement. But as far as coming in from that was really nice, that topography. Too many we got into there. Oh, come on. There we go. So 5th grade again. And then now the school carnivals at Midway were wonderful. This is Jed Hayda, I think. Yeah, Judson Hayda. And he's a Barker that year. This is April '64. But they had the school carnivals, and it was in the gymnasium. Those were just wonderful events. Up on the stage, they always had a cakewalk. You tried to win a cake for your mother. of yourself. I remember one year going to it, and you get a ticket, and you'd walk around, they'd stop the music, you'd stop, and walk around, stop, and then they'd draw a thing, and then you're under there, you won a cake, And I couldn't win a cake, and I think there was some guy there that had won like 3 in a row. He took it away, came back, started doing it again. He just had good luck. He won a lottery ticket or something. My favorite thing in there, though, was fish pond. And that was where you had the big drape, the big screen, and then you threw your hook over with a clothespin, threw over that, and then there was usually the mothers on the other side, and they'd have all of these little toys and prizes, so you'd be holding the pole, and sometimes they'd make you wait a really long time, and you're holding the pole, and then finally, when they thought it was time, and they'd take that clothespin and hook it to a toy, and then they'd pull the string, you get a tug-o. And then you draw it in and see what toy you got. That was wonderful. And duck pond, and of course, bean toss, all of that stuff was fun. Okay, Miss Aubin and Miss Wickland. This was my 6th grade and final, and they shared duties. So Mr. Aubin was one part of the year, and Miss Wickland. The only thing I'll say about Mrs. Wickland is we really tortured her. We were hard on her. And I think I've talked also to her. She was kind of like, I had a teacher in junior high that reminded me of her, and I can't think of her name right now, but she always had her glasses with her. And she's looking for her glasses. And we're all snickering. And she says, "Quit making fun of me, class. You can at least help me find my glasses." And they're like this. That's true. And she was kind of let's see, winter '64. And there again, I guess I put this one in because it's kind of bittersweet. These 3 fellows are deceased. They're gone. I am here, and that's my brother, and he doesn't want to be seen, so he's got a mask on. But yeah, this was Cliff Larson. This is Alan and Tommy Holmes, and all 3 of them are gone.
Alan Holmes was my first boyfriend.
Was it? Yeah. That was a sad thing with Alan. Last time I talked to Alan, and this is way later on, I worked at Target for a very short time up here in the summer of 2000. I'm a retired pharmacist, so I've been all over as a pharmacist. And I was a pharmacist for just a short time at Target, and Alan came in one time, and I hadn't seen him for a long, long time. I wanted to hook up with him again, and then he passed on. He was just like... Anyhow. I put this one up. This is out of our... And I brought some copies if anybody wants to look at them. Actually, I'm standing on them. These are our Easter edition and 6th grade sum up. So these are copies of our papers that we had at the end when we had our banquet, and this was like a yearbook. Like a yearbook kind of thing. But out of one of these, the reason I bring this up is atomic bomb structure. Okay, I'm writing about werewolves. I'm writing about dinosaurs. My stuff is in there. It's like, there again, you see where I got my grades. Mark Lency, and I've shown you him already, pictures of him. He was brilliant from the start. 1962, my dad, I'm going to go back a little bit, he always wanted to play accordion, and there's a long story to that, but he never got around to it, so he decided his first son was going to play accordion. Who didn't want to play accordion, but that's what you're going to do. It's like if your mother died, say, you're going to play the violin, you're going to play the violin. Well, I was going to play the accordion. I hated it. I hated every minute of it. They bought accordion, and I was supposed to practice. Mark Lency was an accordion student, and he came over because he was in Cub Scouts, and he came over to my house one time and had my accordion there, and my mother said, "Oh, and you play accordion?" "Yeah, I'm taking lessons." Picks it up. Sounds like Dick Contino. But I mean, talk about, well, there again. But I mean, the guy was brilliant in every way. And so we're writing about things in these magazines, and he's writing about atomic structure and how an atomic bomb works. But I'm going to say of our class, and everybody is successful in some way. So I'm going to preface by saying everybody is successful in some way. But Mark Lency, I admired him more than any other kid while I was growing up, and maybe not admired, jealous, because I mean he got excellent grades, he could play that accordion that my dad wanted me to play, all of these things. Mark Lency, it's interesting, he had a successful career. Mark Lency went all the way up into the Navy, And he became a commander of a Los Angeles class nuclear submarine that could end the world in the early 90s. He was the commander. He had nuclear Tomahawk missiles and everything. He was a commander of a nuclear submarine, $1 billion machine for the United States. So I'd say he was successful. He got done with that, and then he served his duty on there. But I always thought that was really impressive. In fact, I think it was the Houston was the submarine that he commanded, and I think they had pictures of it in Hunt for Red October. They used some stock footage in that movie of the Houston. But he was a commander of that for 3 years, and I always think, like everything, he'd be the decision on the water if something happened. So Mark Lenzi went on to, I think, just great things. And I can say, okay, now here's our school banquet. Nancy Boxland, we talked about Rudy Boxland, his daughter, me, and Sue Oliver. And this was downstairs. I always said that's the bomb shelter. That was the thing where it said civil defense. You go down the stairs. And that's where a lot of things happened, our lunches, our programs, when we had Cub Scout meetings. I think if they had PTA meetings, that was their social room at Midway School was downstairs. There was 2 ways down. In the back door you'd go down, and then in the front there was a stairway right by the office, and you get down there. I think about that civil defense. We used to practice that drop, tuck, and roll. We're not talking about nuclear submarine. I mean, like we were going to be saved if we rolled under our desk if we got bombed. The other thing I remember about that, and I'm pretty sure that it was John Glenn, but it could have been something else, but I remember watching the launch of a rocket into space, and it was a big deal at the time, and I'm almost positive it was Friendship 7. Because it would have happened about 1962 or so in February. And we were all downstairs. They took the class down, and we sat in front of this black and white snowy TV and watched that rocket launch. And that was it's things like that, or like the assassination of President Kennedy, and come into our class and say, class, everybody, you need to gather your things and go home, and teachers were crying. And, other things happened during that time. Sue and I, there's my Sue again. Halloween parties were always great. She's Countess Vampire and I'm Dracula or something, but this was October 65. We'd have some of the best Halloween parties at our house, because I was into monsters and dinosaurs, so that was, and I had an October birthday. I mean, couldn't have been better. There's Sue again with Nancy Boxland again. I must have hung with these two, because we got a lot of pictures of them. Made our snow rabbit. That was 1966. Larson snowmobiles. Now there's the back of the school. Everybody that snowmobiled up in Midway knew about this when it started. The people that didn't have snowmobiles were madder than hell, and they're calling the police all the time because it wiped out the interception on your television. Especially when you get an old JLO1 lung or something, and you just go by, and they can call in the police. And of course there weren't any laws at that time to speak of. I'm looking at this. I don't think we have the big nomenclature, the big licensing yet. I mean, this was before this, in 66. And the school for Midway, if you were anywhere close to school, this was wonderful driving on this field all over the place, up, down, and everywhere, because you didn't have to worry about hitting anything, except me. So, not these machines. These are, because my dad sold Larson snowmobiles at the gas station a couple years, and then we went to Arctic Cat. So I don't have a picture of it, but once I left Midway, they invested in some equipment in the back, from the back door.
Did your dad used to have red bicycle built for you?
Bicycle built for two.
Yeah, I remember that.
Could go on about all the things. But yes, that's right. But anyways, they built this. And it was Mr. Dolan's. I guess he was an ex-drill instructor or something. I never had him. My brother, as compared to Ms. Simonich, my brother just couldn't stand it, because he had people doing duck walks and everything. Well, anyways, they had this President's Physical Fitness. I think I got a picture on there that Randy passed that. And on one of those, I've got a certificate. But they put all of this stuff. But they had, where I'm going with this, they had metal parallel bars. And they were embedded into concrete. And they were right in front of the gymnasium here in the ground. And one winter, with a 1968 Arctic Cat Panther, I got my glove caught in the throttle when I was racing across here, coming around. It was all ice down by here, so there was no turning one way or the other. Wherever I was going. I went right into that parallel bar. Beat in, if you don't understand what an Arctic cat looks like those days, they square front cowl and everything. Beat it right in, broke the engine from the motor mounts, and I was wearing a helmet, fortunately, because my helmet hit the parallel bar and it cracked the helmet right down the center. And the parallel bar was bent, like that. The solid parallel bar. And my brother used to always brag to his friends while he was going through school. My brother did that. So the worst of it was the skidoo told me home. So, winter fun. Okay. I put this in because I thought this was interesting. This was like 1978, they're advertising women's self-defense class at Midway School. Now, 76 was the last year for the classes, so already they were trying to figure out things to do with the school.
Excuse me. Would you like to hear a story, a little one, about Midway School?
What is it?
We moved there in 1965.
Yeah.
My first son started first grade there.
Okay.
In 1966, in the summertime, I attended the PTA meetings. Two nice ladies came to my house. You see, I was a foreigner. I was overseas. I'm from France. And asked me, would you like to be the secretary of the PTA?
Okay.
I said, sure, why not? So when my husband came home from work, I told him, I says, Howie, I'm the president of I'm the secretary of the PTA at the Midway School. He says, you're what? You don't even know how to read.
Was Morris Dargan in there at the time when you were there?
I had to do everything in French. He had to help me. Mrs. Scalpo, Marian, read my minutes. And Mr. Hinskov, remember him? He was the president. Okay. I went 2 years struggling, but after the first year, it was easy.
Oh. Well, if you saw any of my grades come through, I'm sure you threw them away. They were bad. Thank you for that, sir. Now, where I went to here now, this is October 2003, and I'm going to preface this by saying the last time I saw this school, it was on my 50th birthday. I was born in 53. So on October 6, 2003, my 50th birthday, I was living in Duluth, and I decided I was going to spend the day and visit old haunts and old places. And I went up to Zim, this whole story where I was all over the place. But I wound up in Midway, and the school was just very sad. I mean, it was abandoned. There was nobody in there. And I went around and I took pictures outside of the school. I took a number of pictures. I went to the back door of the school, and I tried the door and it was open. Yeah. So I went in, and I figured I am not supposed to be there. This is the worst thing, and especially since I didn't tell anybody where I was going. I had looked down the staircase, and I think I took a picture, but I thought, okay, I'll go down to the bomb shelter. I'll fall down the steps, and they'll find my mummified body a year later or whatever, because there was nobody there. But the thing that was interesting was I got one last look at the place before it got torn down. So this is the classroom, and there's the little bench there. And that's the classroom that we're sitting in. There's the bench. That's it. So at that point, it was remarkable when I was there and I was looking at, now of course, I was just a little guy then, but when I was in there and looking at the size of the counters and everything, I thought this looks awfully so. But you see how kind of sad that is. I mean, that was the back door to Midway. My two most fondest moments, the things that I remember most about this back door in Midway. Here's another shot of it from behind because I was taking a picture of. Number one is 1960, and they were having the presidential elections, and they divided people up into who. They didn't even ask you who you wanted. They just, you here, and we were practicing debating or whatever, so it was Nixon against Kennedy. I got Richard Nixon. So I remember being out here and arguing with somebody, and I didn't even know who he was. And somebody had given me this chance, Nixon, he's our man. If he can't do it, nobody can. We're going back and forth and back and forth. So that was one. Then the second thing I remember is Midway Grill that I liked, and I got my first kiss back there. Nice. In the moonlight. So that was the back door to it. This is the inside where you come in from the front. When you see the front of the school and come in through the doors, principal office over here. So that was the
Excuse
entry.
me, do you remember when they used to have door guards?
Door
You wore
guards?
a banner in the morning before school, and when the bell rang, you let...
Yeah, I was never one there again. I think that would have been anybody that had higher than a C, maybe, was being assigned to those things. I remember some of that. I mean, I remember there was even student helpers when the alarm would go off when we do fire drills and that.
Yeah.
Because there was, every so often the bell would go off and all right, everybody up, march out of the school, and you'd stand there till the bell went off. Never figured that out, but anyway, practice. Girls and boys, little toilettes. I was fascinated when I was looking at that. I said, "Yeah, I suppose I was one time that." I mean, this. I remember getting drinks out of that. That was kind of fun. Gymnasium. If anybody remembers the gymnasium,
That was a beautiful place.
that gymnasium, we did so many things. One year, I was telling Tucker in '62. It must have been third grade, or that third grade class were the ones, but maybe others did. I only remember doing it once, and we brought our Christmas presents. So whatever we got for Christmas, bring your best Christmas present and go in there, and they had it all like cordoned off, so it was like a toy land. You'd walk around and see what everybody else got. So I remember one kid set up his Lionel train, and I brought King Zor the dinosaur, because I was into dinosaurs, this thing this big, and you shoot darts and hit his tail. And it was wonderful. Being able to do that and like I say, and then the Christmas parties and that. Steve Allen brought his favorite Christmas gift, showed how to clean it, load it. It's a rifle. Probably not going to do that anymore. It's funny how things changed. Growing up in Midway, we had fireworks. I'm going to digress here, but we had fireworks every 4th of July. My dad would sneak them in from Fort Francis at the time, put them in the hub, or put them underneath he'd put a hubcap on the spare tire and he'd load them all in there. They probably knew he had them. But we brought them to Midway, and of course the police would come and confiscate if you had fireworks on 4th of July. Sometimes if they had nothing to do, or the neighbor says they're bothering us. And my dad got around that. His best friend, one of his best friends, was a highway patrolman, and he loved fireworks. So when we had fireworks on 4th of July, he brought his Minnesota Highway Patrol car, parked it in front, and he was in full uniform. I mean, full uniform, lighting the fireworks. The police drove by and they just waved. Never took our fireworks away. I thought that was wonderful. Thinking of him again, sign of the times. He came into the gas station one time, and I had just gotten a new cap gun. It came around the corner. Faster on, just like Wyatt Earp or anything. Faster on him when he came around the corner. Well, he had a loaded sidearm. Bang! He just jumped like this. And, of course, my mother scolded. She says, "You don't pull the gun on a police officer." right now would have... But, at the time, and he just, I startled him. But, I mean, to talk about, a little kid not knowing any better. And guns back then didn't have the orange plugs on them or anything. They looked real when you got a toy gun. This is looking down. This is from the doors that I wasn't supposed to go through back here. I had gone through. So actually what you're looking here is if you got left, then to the gymnasium, all the way down to the end would be the kindergarten. There's those square windows that everybody loved where you put the milk and it sat in the window and got warm before you drank it. Stairway down and then into the office. This is looking from the other way. This is like looking from the first grade, the kindergarten, looking down the hallway this way.
Those are for milk?
No, they were windows. They were like for light.
They weren't for milk, but that's what they...
No, but they put the milk here, and then the light came in and warmed it up because we're waiting to have our milk.
You wanted it warm?
No, that's where they put it.
Oh.
That's where they put it. No, I understand. When they bring it, when they deliver the milk, when we come out and each get our carton of milk, and I think a lot of times it was easier because it came in the cases and it were these little milk containers, and they were all there, and we'd line up just like getting our polio shots or whatever, our sugar cubes. We'd line up and march along, and they were here. But what happened is that the light coming through here kind of warmed the milk a little bit too. Just. I always thought it was anyways. I thought it was warm milk. It was the boiler room. Ken Johnson would have been the janitor, I think, at the time that was running that.
What was the fuel source?
I think it was propane, but they had a big bottle gas out front. No, that wouldn't make sense, would it? Well, it wasn't coal or anything. It had to be something like that. I'm not sure. And then there's this big tank. Maybe it was fuel oil. I know they had a big, like a Skell gas out front, right to the side of this thing. Well, that's the last thing, and then that backstop that is standing there. So that's me 5 years ago, standing there, and nothing left of it. The Midway song. Does anybody that went to... how many went to Midway? Did anybody go to Midway school? Do you remember the Midway song?
No, I probably never sang it. Yeah.
I was told that this song was written by... It would have been class of 69 when they were in about 5th grade. 4th or 5th grade they composed this song, and we had it all along, and my brother remembered it. Everybody remembered it along this time. This was like original printing that my brother had. Somebody had these words in it. I don't know that the thing was ever written down. It was just one of those things like a banner or what, as you pass it down. I remember the words like this. This is how I remember the song.
And those words are?
Well,
can't read it.
I had a dear friend. I'm gonna end this now. But I had a very, very dear friend in Midway. His name was Dave Pochner. He had Robelart's Street, and Dave Pochner worked at Woolworths. And so this is kind of appropriate. I think he gave me this. He got this from Woolworths. This is a plastic guitar from 1967. This is a Brumberger. There's no truss rod in it or anything. It's nylon strings. It's broken. But Dave Pochner gave this to me, and I know he worked at he's passed on now, and he was a wonderful neighbor up the street. So I'll see if I can remember how this song goes. It goes something like this, and I don't know if this thing, I'll always remember the school on the hill, surrounded by beautiful forests so still. Friends that we made, games that we played. Midway's the best, and to us it is still. And that's how. This is part of Midway. That's so, does anybody have? I have that other slides in there that shows my visit, but a lot of it is on pictures and that. If anybody wants to see anything else, if anyone wants to add anything, most of my talk now has been around the school. I mean, Midway was much more than the school. Yes.
My name is Glenn. This is my brother Tom, and our father Joe Aubin was the principal of
Okay.
the school. So if you have any memories you'd like to share.
I do have a memory of Mr. Aubin. This actually involves Buddy Irish. No, this is good. This is a good one. This is a good one of Mr. Aubin. Mr. Aubin, unlike Miss Simonich, I really liked him. I respected him. He was wonderful. Buddy Irish lived at would it be one Telegraph? It's connected to the motel now in Midway. Right at the bottom, the first house.
That's not
It used to. Is that Telegraph?
Cayuna.
Oh, the Cayuna. Okay, that'd be Cayuna then. I forget where that starts. So yeah, so that's one Cayuna. It used to be separate. Now it's connected. So sometime along the way, but a fellow named Richard Irish lived there, and Buddy Irish was an on and off friend of mine. He graduated with me. You'll see in the pictures and that. But Buddy Irish, by the end, he was one of these that was there's always somebody in class that would be picked on once in a while. And I wasn't in because I was actually friends with his. You saw him at my parties and everything, but I chimed into this thing. So a bunch of guys went outside right into the entranceway of the school where we see where the entranceway door is. And there was big banks on either side. And we made all sorts of snowballs. And waiting for Buddy Irish to come out because we were going to turn him white, which we did. We pelted him with snowballs. He didn't know which way to turn because we were on both banks. There was like 3 of us on one side and 3 on the other, and we were throwing snowballs at him, and he'd turn and get hit, he'd turn and get hit. He was mean. Well, we hit Mr. Aubin because he came afterwards. So I don't remember how much detention I had to be in. I had to come after school and stay. And I think I had to write something too. But I think fondly of Mr. Aubin, but that's my best Mr. Aubin story. He and Sid Roy. I don't think Sid Roy. Man, I think it was Joe Aubin that was sitting there for all of those detentions. Poor guy, he had to sit there too. But that was over Buddy Irish, and Buddy Irish was just dripping wet because boy did he get plowed. But we didn't know that a teacher was going to come out afterwards. We were just pounding him. So.
It was 94.
Yeah. He would have been wonderful to have talked. So many people that are gone. I'll be 67, and I was a kid. I was a little tiny kid at this time. So this information is all going to disappear. It's all going to be gone. So I talked to Tucker. I said, the more that you can try and put together and try and save, because my mother was a font of knowledge. She passed away in 91. The millions of things that I would like to ask her right now, even for some of the pictures or notes or things that I don't know, she would like that. She would have known that. And I tell my kids too, I said, start asking me something before I'm gone, because then all my information is going to be gone.
And I visited with your dad at Edward Vista. My mom was there.
You did.
I did, and I got to know your mom.
What's your name?
My name was Swarto. We lived on
That
Telegraph.
would have been our stepmother, because our birth mother passed away in 85.
Let me ask you, did Joe Aubin, did he go on then after Midway to another school?
Well,
Yes.
he became the elementary coordinator, kind of like the superintendent
Okay.
of all the grade schools
Okay.
in town, and he went.
And he was at Horace Mann.
He went to Horace Mann, and after Midway closed, so
was
he
at
was the
James
only
Madison.
principal.
He went to James Madison.
He went
Yes.
to James Madison.
Okay.
And Horace Mann.
And Horace Mann. Yeah.
A lot of them, once Midway was gone, you could see the writing on the wall. I have my father-in-law, Andy, was, when he passed away, and my wife's parents, his Andy Bradish, and he was the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce for many, many years. So I have some of his documents that he had, and there was one that was done for a study for Virginia in 1964, and it's very eye-opening. It's interesting what they say and what Virginia should do, because in actuality they said that the outlook was very grim, and yet the study seemed to be optimistic about the growth of Virginia, and the opposite happened. One of the things they said was consolidation of the schools, and you could see already, because Midway was brand new in '58. It was a beautiful school. It lasted 18 years. Went down in '76. That was the last students there, I think.
His first teaching job was in Virginia when he retired.
Yeah. And Sid Roy, I remember Sid Roy being really nice too. Yeah. We respected them. I don't know. I know we had bad kids. I made myself sound like I was just poor academically, but as far as for getting out of trouble, I see in my report cards always satisfactory or very good, followed directions, and I just didn't do very well following directions. But coming to that, I think that being a school teacher nowadays would be horrible. Horrible. It was different. We talked about Miss Simonich. Some of the things she did probably would be. The police would be visiting her. Yes.
I remember that name.
What was that? What was the bus driver's name?
Mr. Givens, Bob
Yeah,
Givens.
oh, he was strict. He was strict.
Yeah, but he was an incredible guy, and there's a book written about Robert Givens, and he was always extremely kind to me, and he ran a good bus.
But he was strict. You didn't mess up on the bus, or you got up and had to walk up the hill.
Oh yeah, I remember. I think somebody was unloaded halfway between Virginia and Midway, and he pulled over to the side, and off they went. You know, if he would have been my bus driver, I had some trouble with some couple of kids in Midway. I made, in 7th grade, we had woodworking. Now I'm getting into 7th grade, but made a letter opener, and I made it for my mother, because, you know, she always had lots of letters. Oh, you always make things for your mother when you're born. And so I made this letter opener. I worked on it till it was all done. I sanded it, I cut it, I varnished it, and it had the letter holder thing coming out. So I got it all done, and I was in 7th grade, so we get on the bus, and I'm going to ride back to Midway. So I get on the bus, and these same mean guys are on the bus, and I'm holding my project. Well, you know where that went, finally. He got it out of my hands, and he just looked at me and smiled, and he smushed it. He just smacked it and busted it off and handed it back to me. He says, "Here you are, kid." And I got home. I didn't on the bus, but I got home, and I was 7th grade, and I cried. I cried my eyes out. And my mother gave it to my dad, and he took it and he glued it. He glued it back so it got back to where it was, although it had the cracks, just like my hand thing in there. And you know, it's funny how you carry something for a while. I thought, I'm going to kill this kid when I find him, because I was only that size, and I'm not small anymore. And I know who he was, and he probably didn't get much higher than this. And I said, if I get him, I'm going to pound him, but I forgive him. If I ever see him, I'm not even going to say a thing. But I mean, that was traumatic. I bring that up because of Bob Givens. I never happened on his bus. Never. I never saw anything like that. But when other bus drivers, they may be, and you know, a bus like anything else, if you don't control the crowd, you let the strong prey on the weak, and that was a very traumatic time. In fact, I remember when he snapped it. It was right in front of Salo's Milk House, right down in the front. Snapped it right in half, and gave it back to me. So, but anyways, anything else?
My sister's got some class pictures. Three different ones.
Where my dad was a teacher, and then there's another one here. I don't know, there's a list of names.
Did he? Well, I was going to say, did he ever mention about that kid that never got higher than a C?
He never did that.
I make fun of that. I actually once in a while, Mrs. Hill's class, I think I got my first A, or one of the very few, because that period we were studying dinosaurs. Class, can anybody tell me what this is? That's a Tyrannosaurus. That's an Ankylosaurus. That's a That's a Plesiosaurus. That's a Brontosaurus. Going down like this, she says, "Oh, this is somewhere." And I got my first A, and that was the end of it. It went back to the other thing too is, and you heard my playing, I did get a D in music. It's interesting how that all goes. Sometimes you develop later. Anybody else? Yes.
I think I remember the school in the 70s being used as a daycare center.
Yes. I think it was Head Start. It was a daycare. Yes, all sorts of things at the end. In fact, it's on. Somebody told me that I think it was P.S. Engman, Paul Engman, that had purchased it or something like for $50,000 a school at the end, and it was going to try to do something with it. Now, down in Duluth, in Proctor, the high school there that was built in 1957. Somebody actually took the time, and they came in there, and all the rooms they converted it into. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. In fact, I know a person that lives there, and they said that their place is actually in the old science room, and there's 3 floors, and they use the gymnasium for indoor parking for the cars. It's just incredible.
Apartment, is it?
Yeah, it's an apartment.
Wow.
Yeah, it was converted. It is absolutely beautiful. It was built in '57, same as Midway. It was a high school that was no longer needed, but they took it upon themselves to refurb it, and these are. A couple of them are rental, but most of them are purchased. People actually purchase them, so they have like a homeowners association there, and it's a really nice facility, but it's something that Midway could have done. And I think Engman was probably looking at that at the time when he bought it, trying to figure out, because if you think about it on flat land like that, how nice. I mean, there's a lot of, even for people with limited mobility, all on one land. I don't know. I mean, and this is the wrong crowd to ask, but I mean, is it more cost effective to rip all this stuff down? I don't think so.
Well, Cook didn't.
I mean Cook, I mean Cotton.
Yeah. Cotton's is nice too. With all of the, I mean, there's ways that you can do it, but I think it was probably the wrong time. 2003, I looked at it. You see my pictures, and I could show them later if somebody wants to stay and look at some of the ones that I took around. But it's all trashed and everything, but the bones are there. The skeleton is there. It's good. It could have been used. But anyway, anybody else? Yes.
We lived on Telegraph, which was 1 block above the skating rink.
Okay, yes,
and
Telegraph.
So we could see from our living room window all the way down to the highway. We could see the teachers driving up and not making it up the hill and parking at the skating rink and walking all that way. And we thought that was kind of funny. That happened regularly in the wintertime.
That was a problem until you get the sanding trucks. My dad, too, with the wrecker, 2-ton wrecker with dual wheels, and he's fishtailing in the back. I mean, he couldn't get up either a lot of times.
And my other thing is about Miss Simonich, and I didn't know she was a taskmaster. I always thought she was a very nice person.
She is outside of the class. She
My daughter had her for 2nd grade, and my daughter was little. And when I went to parent-teachers conference, the teacher, Miss Simonich, said to me, "I don't think Jade likes me." And I was so surprised. I went home and I said to Jade, "Your teacher thinks you don't like her. Don't you like her?" And she said, and this is a time when women wore pantsuits, all one color. She said, "Oh, I like Miss Simonich when she wears a dress, but when she wears pants, she looks like a giant."
She was a very tall woman, and the other thing too is she had kind of old shoes too. I think at times, and they clickety clack. We would be acting up in there, and you could hear her coming. There were some teachers you couldn't hear. You know, click, 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 and say, "Oh, yes."
If you got your pants wet during recess and came back in, maybe you wear girls' tights.
You know, I think all that. You know, when you said about going on recess, another thing occurred to me. Does anybody remember the shack up there at Midway? The shack.
Oh, yeah.
That was wonderful. That was like for summer activities. Go up there and make plaster of Paris. Pick up sticks, you get balls, and go play outside. And that was just really nice. The last day of class too, you'd bring a picnic and you could go outside and have your lunch. And I get off subject then, but anything else?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just curious. Do you know when the Dairy Queen was built?
No, but we could look in these pictures see if there's anything there.
Must have been early 50s.
It have to be.
It's in the 50s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was, I vaguely remember it as a kid before they built the school.
Yeah. Does anybody remember the first drive-in up here?
Bonds?
I'm going to say in Evelyn, Gilbert, Virginia, Mount Iron area.
Drive-in movie theater or restaurant?
Eating. Drive-in eating. Not Frost Stop.
A&W's.
Well, yes, but which A&W? Which one?
Lantern, south of Evelyn, the gateway.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember in high school.
well, you know, because I'm thinking like Ting Tong when we go to Hibbing, and you'd have those, but not that. But anyways, what I've found that the answer is the WEVE building right there, where WEVE is, and that was below. It was a gas station when it opened, 51, and right next to them, right next to it was the A&W, the first one, that then got ripped down. And that was Gordy Lundquist, Gordy's hi-hat in Cloquet, who is still, he's the same age as my dad, so he's 93, 94 now, and he's still serving hamburgers.
Doing fantastic.
And he's doing fantastic. But he had the first drive-in right across from the cemetery there. And then the trampolines? Remember going to the trampolines in Boston? Okay, yes.
You remember when the Dairy Queen was for sale for $5,000? My kids were way too small. I thought we should have bought it.
Oh, yeah. Well, all of that stuff, hindsight. I mean, look at the school. I mean, Engman paid $50, which was big, but I mean, when you think of what it cost to put up.
We live right down the street
Do
from
you
it.
remember the dairy?
The dairy, Salo's Dairy?
The dairy store, yeah.
Dairy store, Salo. I go to church with her in the family, Karen Salo. She's still, we talk about that once in a while. Yeah, I used to go down there, and I mean, it wasn't so much the dairy, but was buying all of the bubblegum cards and all of that kind of stuff. There's an interesting story, too. I had a friend, it's kind of it's kind of sad in a way. His mother used to always give him money to go down to the gas station and get her cigarettes because she was always she didn't want to go. So she'd give him money and she'd say, go down to that. And after a while, you guess who was smoking him? But she'd send him down for cigarettes. Now you couldn't do that. But you used to go down there with a note or whatever, give him money. But I think of that with the gas station. Berg had that. And then and then Salo, the dairy was there. And then of course the Dairy Queen and Parfait. Real quick, I could get off subject too much. You remember the Parfait cups? They were plastic. And they had a top on them, and you could take it off and you'd put it on the bottom, and then it could stand. They were called Parfait at the Dairy Queen.
Could you explain what the dairy store was for people who aren't of that era?
Like a 7-Eleven or a Quick Stop, or now what we've got is milk store. You go in, you could get milk, you could get orange juice, you could get eggs, because they had dairy. The Salos had a dairy, so that they provided with all of those things, and then also they'd have like bread, and they'd have all sorts of candies and novelties. So and that's it's the Salos Dairy Store or whatever. But I'm thinking of this Parfait cup now. I got that and I took it home and I cleaned it out. And there again, space and rocket ships and all sorts of stuff. And I told you about my dad with the fireworks. So I cleaned out the Parfait cup completely, and I had a Lionel train set, and I busted off the coal car, the top of it. So I just had that, and I put track in the backyard. It was nice and long. And I was going to make a rocket car. So I took the plastic Parfait cup and I stuffed it full of fireworks as much as I could. And I put a fuse on it, and then I wrapped some tape around the end to hold it on that part of it. But then I had the outside, open, so that my idea was I was going to put this thing. My brother was in on this too. But I was going to put this here, light the fuse, and we were going to watch this rocket car go down because I had seen some sort of show like that. So everything worked really well until we lit the fuse and the damn thing blew up. It did not rocket car. It went all over the place. I remember a kid had a bullet. He had a bullet and he put it in his dad's vise in the basement, and he packed the pin and he put the bullet right through the concrete. We did all sorts of bad things.
When I talked to this guy on Wednesday, he thought he wasn't going to have enough to talk about. He thought it's going to be 15 minutes and it's going to be done. I don't know what I'm going to talk about.
Everybody, look how long I've gone. I will wrap it up. Unless anybody else wants to talk,
After you sang that song, we're going to watch for you on America's Got
Talent. Thank you. No, it's funny. It's funny. I can't sing. I decided I can't sing long ago because of my wife, and but when I got to church, they're having me sing. So I don't know. I was actually in a band for a while in the 70s.
I think the story about the accordion and the guitar, I think you should tell that at the end here.
Oh, all right. I'll do this real quick.
Please.
All right. Okay, so I told you about the accordion. So I bought my dad bought this used accordion for $200. I'm going to back up real quick. When he was in occupational Japan, I told you he was in the service. He saved all of his money and he bought an accordion out of a shop in Tokyo. And when he was ready to go back to the United States, getting on the boat, the officers or the sergeants or whatever, you'd start in and said, "What's in your knapsack?" So we've been looking in there. No, you can't take this back to the States. So they were emptying out everything, so he couldn't take his accordion back. And he was always really angry because he said, they got it. They took it home. Because the officers could take all this stuff home, but the enlisted guys, they had to drop it where they got before they got on the boat. So he was always regretful that he never had this accordion. And like I say, why didn't he buy the accordion, take lessons? He wouldn't do it. And there's a whole story with that. I love my dad, but it was always, you do it so much better, you do it. So he found this accordion used in 1962 and he bought it. Now I was going to play the accordion. There's two, my brother and I, firstborn was going to play the accordion. I was it, so I'm going to play the accordion. I didn't want to play accordion. We had a lot of arguments about that. I didn't want to do it. No, we're going to play accordion. So he got a hold of a guy named Bob Lind. He lived in Sparta location outside of Gilbert. He was an accordion teacher. So he'd come give me lessons all the time. I never practiced just like at school. It proved. Never practiced, and my folks were frustrated. I remember Bob Lind telling my dad one time, he says, "You're just giving me money for nothing. This kid is never going to play the accordion." And Mark Lency showed me how to play the accordion. I don't care. I don't want to play the accordion. He'd take me down to Duluth. We went inside the Cantino. Cool. Went and met Myron Florin in Wisconsin Dells. Cool. He's trying to introduce me to all the accordion guys. I just did not want to play accordion. My brother gets of age. What would you like to play? I had to play accordion. What do you mean, what does he get? And my brother, I don't want to play anything. Randy hates music. He doesn't. He barely turned on the radio. He didn't want to play anything. You have to play something, Randy. I don't want to play anything. You have to play something. So after pushing him around, he says, okay, guitar. Okay, guitar. So you go out and you get him a Kingston guitar. I think he took some lessons from Pernu. Up the lot. He also took a couple lessons from Dennis Monroe, who that's a whole different story. He was in the Small Society. I'm actually doing a compilation. I hope to do an article or a thing on bands in Virginia, the Vaqueros, Tomorrow's Children's Small Society, but that's another program. But Dennis was in that, and so he gave my brother lessons, and he got, there again, there's another guy, he just didn't want to play. Not going to practice. So my dad, you practice that accordion, you practice that guitar, nobody's going to do anything. I kind of like guitar. I really love guitar. So I'd go up to Randy's guitar, and we had an Ampeg and this Ampeg amplifier in this guitar, and I'd be trying to learn a chord, and of course nobody was going to show me because I was supposed to be playing accordion. So my dad would see us, and he'd say, "You give that guitar to Randy and go and get your accordion and start practicing that." And Randy, if you know my brother, I mean, we had a real rivalry. I mean, we'd be screaming and punching each other out if somebody took their car or their model or whatever. And he says, "That's okay if he uses my guitar." First time ever. Otherwise, Mom, Dad, he's taking my stuff. Oh, no, he can play on guitar. He said, "No, play accordion." So they're paying for lessons for me that I'm not learning. Randy's not learning guitar. He doesn't want guitar. So after a while, of course, we broke. We broke my parents. And finally they gave up and they said, "Okay, you can stop accordion to me and you can start guitar." And I think my mother won some lessons from Specialized Music at the home show or something in Virginia in the 60s. So she got like 12 lessons, so I got a little overview of it at that time. But then with Bob Driscoll and different people showing me that, so I loved it. So I started on guitar, and Randy didn't have to play nothing to this day, and he's happy. He just has no interest whatsoever. So yeah, so after the time, and to end the story, I still have the accordion from 1962, and believe it or not, I can play it a little bit, but I don't like it.
You still have the accordion?
Anybody else? I have talked way too long.
That's not what I was trying to say.
I was going to say, are you all bored yet?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm just wondering if somebody would like some coffee and some treats while we're in.
I'll stick around. Do you want to have coffee and treats? And I'll hang
visiting.
around. And if you have anything else that you want to talk about or anything that anyone has a question, I'm free. I have 2 cats waiting for me in Duluth, and that's all. And they've got plenty of food.